Hi, this is Mike Rankin with Relational Intelligence, and I am pleased to introduce my guest with me today is Mr. Brad Neglia, who is a principal with LBA, also known as Leighton Belling and Associates. And Brad and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other. I probably should have done the math, but it's a good solid 30 years, I think, at this point.
Just over.
And welcome, Brad.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So whenever I have a new guest, and I already knew this about you, but whenever I have a new guest, I usually try to go through the LinkedIn and look a little at their background. And something I found that was interesting, and I knew it, but something about when you actually see it, live. This LBA, your position there, this is your second job out of college.
That's correct. Yeah. Pretty unique these days.
It is pretty unique.
Yeah.
Right?
You've only had 3.
That's exactly right. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
So just about the same, and obviously starting Relational 3 years ago, that's kind of number 3. But that's truly amazing. So share with me a little bit about that early journey. How did you decide even to get into the business, and then when the LBA opportunity presented itself, how did you find that?
Sure. So going back, UC Santa Barbara.
Go Gauchos.
Go Gauchos. I was in the Career Counseling Center. That was my college job. And when we all were picking specialties, I just happened to pick real estate out of the blue. So I did a lot of research on real estate careers back in the day where research was actually research.
Yes, right.
Pulling books out.
You just didn't ask ChatGPT.
Nope.
Right.
I got an introduction into the career and the industry that way. Students that came in and asked about how to make connections, that was my job. So when I graduated, I had an inkling that that's what I wanted to do. And then I started scouring the fraternity directory for former fraternity brothers that had graduated and were in the business, and I started just dialing for dollars.
Smart.
And I ended up landing a position with Grubb & Ellis, brokerage firm in the Anaheim office in 1992, which was probably one of the worst times to start.
Right, just right in the teeth of that recession, right?
Correct.
Was that the hangover from the savings and loan crisis?
Completely, yeah. The RTO.
Right, Resolution Trust.
RTC.
RTC,
and a lot of the banks had foreclosed on properties. So, I mean, if you look at today and what's happening today, I'm guessing we're going to get into it a little bit.
Exactly.
I've been through this.
Maybe we're at the beginning of
I've
that.
I've been through this in the early stages of my career, but it was a great way to learn. It's always easy to learn when things are good. It's actually really important to learn when things are bad.
Yes.
So that's how I got started. I was doing industrial sale and leasing in the what's called the mid-cities area, so the space between Orange County and LA, heavy industrial market. I had a great mentor who took me under his wing in a runnership program. And I kicked off my career in brokerage, that first job.
And I don't remember the name of the award, but I remember seeing it, and it's a bronze, the bottom of a shoe with a hole in it. What was
Correct.
that?
It was the Cold Call Champ Award.
Yes.
And my mentor, I'd beat him into the office, which was the thing you had to do back in the day. You remember that? And he'd say, "Okay, off you go. Go get me 100 business cards."
Yeah.
And I'd walk the streets during the summer in the heat and knock on doors of the industrial buildings, and try and actually get past the receptionist. That was the early sales,
name of the game, right?
The early sales deal. Much easier to do in industrial than office, kind of why I picked industrial. It was more interesting to me. Office was a path that I could have taken in the early days. But you could go in a truck door and talk to the warehouse.
Bay doors just open.
Talk to the warehouse guy.
Right.
So I got a lot of good sales training, and I won the Cold Call Champ Award that year. Yeah.
It's interesting just on that story for a moment. We both have adult children, right? And so I'm always thinking about the differences of, let's say, when we went into the workforce and now what they're coming into. But still, some of those tried and true values of picking up the phone and dialing for dollars. I mean, the phone is not dead. It is such a powerful tool, and my feeling is that with a lot of our kids, I'll just speak for my own, that reluctance to pick up the phone and make that call is tremendous. I mean, I know it was for us as well, but I feel like it's even more so now.
They just have so many more lines of communication
Avenues,
options.
right, yep.
And the phone is probably the last one. Most houses don't have one.
Right.
Think about it that
Exactly.
way. Whereas that was the only way we could communicate
Right.
when we were growing up.
And if you had to call a person of interest, a friend.
Right.
Well, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Is Timmy there or Jenny?
You had to get past the receptionist.
Yes, right.
The parent.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. But that is an interesting point, that I think in the real estate business when I came in is not the same as it is today. People ask me for advice they're totally different industries now. Then information was power. Now everybody has information and they have it all at the same time. So now it's relationships is the power, and that's but you got that even then. You had to focus on networking and developing relationships, but most of it was over the phone.
That's right.
Most of it was over the phone.
Yeah. And it's interesting, other conversations that I've had where we're talking about, AI coming into the business, and whether it's ChatGPT or otherwise, the theme that seems to be coming out of that, which is information is everywhere, yes. ChatGPT can certainly tell you how to write an app, or it can give you the recipe, but it doesn't tell you how to cook. It doesn't tell you how so those elements of emotional intelligence and relationship building, I think, are going to be more important than ever.
Definitely can't replace that, but it's also those aren't the skill sets that are really being taught necessarily.
Isn't that interesting?
So we have to focus on that with our own kids.
Yeah.
And continue to parent them much longer than probably we got parented.
Right.
We were just kind of thrown out there. But schools and everything have to adjust to that for sure.
So take me back to the transition to LBA.
Sure. So you actually played a very small but big part in it. I had been introduced to LBA through a deal that I worked on when I was at Grubb & Ellis as a broker, and one of the principals was at your engagement party.
Yes.
At the buffet table, if you will.
That's right.
And he inquired to see if I was interested in doing something different in the business, and I was eager to jump at that and get on the ownership side. But I didn't really know that much about the company at the time. So that was a lot of, again, investigation, talking to my peer groups in the brokerage business about the reputation of Steve Layton, Phil Belling, Steve Briggs, and I got a lot of great input.
Because they had just started a few years prior to that, right? I mean, so it wasn't like you could go and research the track history of the company.
Not at all. And they were doing receivership work. They were doing workouts for banks. They hadn't even started investing yet. The investment program they put together literally was launched the day I started in June of 1995.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so my memory sort of tells me that LBA started more in the office space and transitioned into industrial. But is that accurate or not really? It was kind of both and.
It's somewhat accurate. I mean, I think in Orange County we're well known for our office investments. There were some industrial transactions that we did. A lot of us had industrial background. But for the most part, we were thought of as an office player. We did a large portfolio deal in '98 where we bought 8 Orange County office buildings.
Got it.
From Shua, failed Japanese conglomerate, and I think and so that
4100 might have been in.
It was, yeah, it was. So that was kind of what set the reputation here in Orange County.
Yeah.
But as we started to branch out into other markets, San Diego, San Francisco, we had some flex industrial and some one-off industrial deals. I think our real foray into industrial was when we raised our first fund that was different than pension fund money that we had been managing before.
Right.
And it was an industrial fund. About $100 million, and we went out and bought $100 million plus worth of industrial product, and that kicked off our quote unquote fund business.
And how long ago was that? What roughly?
That was 2000. That was 2001.
Right.
So we were managing.
So we're 22 years into it,
22
right?
years.
And now we look around the real estate landscape, and all you hear about is industrial, right? And for good reason. But it's like many overnight successes. They started 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, we leaned in pretty hard, and over time we've managed to build a national industrial portfolio. And we've kept our office investing really on the West Coast for the most part, Denver West. Office business is a lot more sharpshooter. You got to have more boots on the ground. You got to be more in tune with what the sub-markets are. The industrial business is just a much larger platform. Supply chains, kind of reach all areas. And a lot of our customers, when we were focusing on the West Coast on industrial, said, "Hey, you guys should really think about expanding." So we have, and we're basically in every tier 1 and tier 2 industrial market in the country now.
And any designs on expanding beyond the U.S.?
Potentially. Again, same customers, same investors of ours have said, "Hey, you guys should really take a look at Europe. You should really take a look at Canada. The fundamentals and how you guys operate would do well there. It's complicated. And we've always, even at that 20 years, it's a long time. We've always had this crawl, walk, run mentality. Not start running right away."
Right.
And I think that has served us well in our ability to develop relationships that we need to, and to learn the markets. Again, a big part of what we do as an operator is understanding the real estate itself. We stay close to it. We manage all the properties ourselves. We do all the leasing ourselves.
So, I realize you just said it, but let me reiterate to make sure I heard it correctly. You do all the property management of your buildings yourself?
We do.
Wow.
Yeah, in-house. And when I say we lease the buildings ourselves, we have a leasing team that hires brokers. So we do market our properties, all of them with the CBREs, the JLLs, the Cushman & Wakefields, the Colliers of the world. But we have a dedicated team to overseeing occupancy.
Yes.
And that's what I did.
Protect your interests. Yeah.
That's what I've done for the better part of my tenure, almost 28 years there, is overseeing that leasing function. Yeah.
So I have to ask, share with us what is happening on the commercial front, in specifically in office, and not necessarily with LBA, but obviously you pick up the Wall Street Journal and you look at, obviously the credit crunch and building valuations seem to be dropping, and a lot of debt needs to be refinanced.
Right. It's a combination of things. We all lived through the pandemic, which changed the way space was used for sure. And it really created this dynamic of hybrid work that still doesn't have much clarity to it.
Right.
I think companies are still trying to figure out what is the
100%.
what the best balance is. But there has not been a full return to work. You couple that with the fact that the economy's, are we headed towards a recession? It's debatable. But no question that the interest rate inflation that the Fed has enacted to combat actual inflation has had a profound impact on values, kind of across all sectors, some more than others. Industrial, we talked about it. It's probably been mitigated by rent growth. So even though
and the demand side is still
pretty
strong.
robust, and a higher interest rate environment makes it more difficult to finance new construction. So that's keeping a lid on supply.
Right.
On the office side, it's definitely more problematic.
There's nothing but supply at this point.
The tech industry was driving a lot of the absorption that we saw, even during COVID, 2020, 21, and into 2022. and they have pulled that back. They probably overhired, as we've seen, and that's been, widely publicized. Their layoffs are starting to happen. They're not taking any more space. So you couple that with companies looking at their workforce and saying, "Hey, I'm only having my people come in 3 days a week. Do I really need 10,000 feet? Can I operate in 7?" And so, there's clearly a shrinking of the overall office footprint. And then in some of the markets that we operate in, the urban centers, downtown LA, downtown San Francisco, downtown Seattle, downtown Denver, there's just flat out public safety issues of going to work.
Absolutely.
And that's playing out as well in the value deterioration. But at the end of the day, you kind of touched on it. There's a lot of bank debt that's coming due this year, next year, 2024. That's much lower than what you can refinance it at, and a lot of these buildings probably are underwater.
Yep. Yeah, and it's amazing as stark as the problem is, how long it takes for these cycles to play out.
Yeah, and maybe differently than in times past, these lenders don't really want to take these buildings back.
Right.
So foreclosure, the foreclosure process takes a long time. Who's in charge of the asset? That's where we came in the early 90s as a receiver. You managed that the building while the foreclosure process happens. So I think that the owners of these buildings and the lenders really need to work together. Thankfully, we have great relationships with our lenders.
Yeah.
In many cases, you're just going to try and figure out the best exit for everybody.
Right.
No one's going to win.
Right.
But everybody doesn't have to lose.
Right.
Everybody's gonna.
Right. Everyone's going to lose.
Yeah,
not everyone has to die.
Not one
Right.
person's going to be the loser.
Right.
Right. I think it's a matter of, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time.
I want to go back to something that we had kind of touched on earlier, which is, tell me a little bit about the culture at LBA and as you guys are hiring and bringing new people into the business. So I guess kind of a two-parter. One, share with me the culture at LBA and also when you're, advising young people coming into not only the company or the business in general.
I personally am proud of the culture we have. We have a lot of people that have been there a long time, like I have. We just had our annual executive team conference, and the average tenure in the room was 13 years.
Wow.
And it was 45 people. That said, at 250 people plus or minus in the company, we have a lot of people that have been there less than 3 years.
Sure.
So there's somewhat of a bifurcation of people that have
like
been here a long time,
right? Yeah.
and people that are like, and of those 3 years, 2 years were spent, a year and a half were spent at home.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So reintroducing the culture has been a big priority for us, and we're focused on that now. We like to promote from within. We're always looking for opportunities for people to grow. But there are some challenges as well. Again, we have a national platform. We've got offices across the country. So making those other offices in New Jersey and Tampa and Denver feel a part of the LBA family is something that we spend a lot of time focusing on as well. Yeah. Again, in Irvine, which is where our headquarters is about 100 of the 250.
Right.
And it's, we continue as everybody comes back to more of a normal environment. We continue to mentor the young people and provide resources to them and access for them to what we do and why we do it.
Right.
And that's paid off. It really has. You got to think of these multi-generational companies like we are now in different ways. You got to connect with the young people differently. They want to be. They want to feel like they're part of the big picture. Yes. Which back when I was rolling, it was I just get in work and do my job. Right. And hopefully one day somebody will think something will happen out there. Right. They come in wanting something to happen like day one and be a part of something day one. Yeah. And so you have to embrace that. Yeah.
And I also think it's really important. It's easy to, just kind of hang back with the people that you've known for, 5, 10, and 20 years in kind of a more insular environment. But creating opportunities and avenues for outreach and to, build those bonds and relationships, I think is probably really important.
Yeah.
And harder to do as you grow and scale and spread out over the globe.
And we've touched on it. Technology's changed. Ways to connect are different. We're trying to be more mindful of what they want. While it's easy to just make decisions, I spend a fair amount of time, asking this question: what would you do? Right? You come to me with a question: what would you do? Come if you're going to come to me with a problem, come to me with 3 solutions.
Right.
That's the only way that, these, and they really they embrace that.
Sure.
Right. They want to contribute in that way. It takes a little bit more time, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
They grow, they learn, and they become more productive more quickly, is what we found.
I remember about 2 years into my first job, at some point my mentor, Joe Stefano, who he said, Mike, I'm happy to continue to answer your questions, but I think that what I'd like to see is you come in with a question and an answer.
Right.
And you're at that stage. And obviously to this day I remember that. And so the next time when I kind of ran up against something, I thought, okay, well, let's kind of think through that. And unless you're challenged to really do that as a younger employee, you think that everybody else knows everything, and I'm just trying to do my little part, and
right.
And that was moving for me.
Yeah, the one thing I do, and I also say this: if you come in and ask me a question, listen to what I have to say.
Yes, please.
Don't come back and ask the same question again.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
really important one.
Yeah, that's an important one.
So anything exciting going on with the Neglia family, or what's on the horizon? I know we've got one graduated.
One graduated, yeah. And again, the lessons that I learn at the office, I apply at home all the time.
Right.
Because that workforce, that age workforce, is effectively where my oldest son and your oldest son are at 23. So he's off doing his thing in Denver, getting his master's. I got one a junior in college. So we got another graduation next year.
Go Eagles.
Go Eagles. Candidly, I'm visiting Italy for the first time. I'm Italian. I claim to be Italian. I haven't been there yet, so we got an Italy trip, my wife and I.
Yes.
In 2 weeks.
So, and is there family you're going to see at all? Is it?
Yeah. So I've connected with. I do have family in Sicily.
And it's Neglia.
Neglia.
Okay.
Correct. The G is silent, and I'm going to go visit where my grandfather was born. Yeah, so super excited about that. Really
that brings
excited.
tears to my eyes. I love that. I love that story.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming in.
It was awesome being here.
Your time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, bud.